So let's go back to our .NET. So this will be, let's actually rename this .NET to main sim. And let's cache the simulation that we have from this so far. I'll go ahead and to the right, I'll drop down a DOP import node. And I will make this point to my DOP network. And for object mask, I want to use any object that has RBD somewhere in them. So in this case, if we look here, it's going to be this RBD packed object. And let's go back up and preview this. And let's use import style. Let's use create points to represent objects. Okay, so these are our objects that are being simulated. Let's move this over to the right a little bit and let's look for our high quality pieces. So over here, so let's grab this and let's object merge these over here with our DOP import node. So place them here, and now I will simply place this inside a transform pieces SOP and set the points to be our template points. And if I preview the result, all of our pieces should now be moving with the simulated points. So let's go ahead and let's press play. And we can see that everything works, and these are using now the high quality version of the pieces as well. So we can see that now we have a very detailed simulation. And these are the cracks that I was talking about earlier when we were creating the active attribute. So these are pieces that are being affected by the gravity as they turn active. And it's creating this sort of cracks between them, which I really like. And I think it adds a lot to our simulation. And we can see that since these pieces right here on the edge are not active, they won't be moving at all, and this will now create a seamless result with the rest of our terrain. Speaking of which, we can also grab this exterior terrain over here from all the way up to the top. And I think this will be the one that I'm talking about. Alright, so geoext. Let's maybe drop down a file cache here as well. And also cache this so we don't have to cook this boolean node. So geoext, and I will save to disk. And let's grab this node and drag it over here to the bottom. And I will copy this object merge and place this here. And from these transform pieces, I can simply drop down another merge and merge these together. And now we can see that there is a seamless blend between the fractured pieces and the rest of the terrain. So this is perfect. And maybe let's just create a flipbook with what we have so far. So let's run a flipbook. So here is the result so far. Okay, so I can pretty much say that I'm satisfied with this look. Now for full disclosure, all the settings and the values were the result really of a ton of experimentation. So stuff like making the pieces sort of spread apart on each side of the lining where it hits, where we created our vector. So a lot of this stuff is really the result of many iterations. So this result that you're seeing here is probably the 20th version of this lining effect that I did. So I really did a lot of experiments until I came up with this result. So just know that this is a very specific look that I was going for. So let's maybe drop a file cache after this DOP import node. So these are going to be the points that are simulated. Let's actually just simulate a few more frames, and I can just assume that these pieces will kind of settle maybe at around frame 120, 130, but just to be sure, I want to simulate let's say maybe a frame range of 150. So from here I will drop down a file cache, and let's actually just get rid of the version, and I want to control shift click this second value over here and just type in 150. Let's choose a folder and let's give this a name. So I will just name this sim, and I will save to disk. So now our points are simmed, and we can scrub the timeline freely and also scrub it with our high quality pieces. Okay, so we can see that maybe up until frame 150, some of these pieces are still moving, but the way that we are going to handle this explosion is that we are going to use some retiming as well. So let's make some room over here, and first I want to delay the frame at which this explosion occurs. So currently we are starting at maybe around frame 5. I want to drop down a time shift after our cache, and I want to delay this explosion with 15 frames. So let's just set the value here to $F -15. So now from here, from our time shift, we can move forward and we can see that they start at frame 15. Let's also use clamp to both, and I want the end frame to be 150. So I want to hold the points at 150. Okay, so we can preview the points and we can see that they start moving at around frame maybe 20. Great, and they should stop moving at around frame 165, and then they are kept frozen in a state. Okay, so we can also preview our pieces. So this is probably the coolest part of the whole setup, is that we can drop a retime node after our time shift and we can speed up the explosion, or we can create some very cool slow motion effects. But what I want to do with this retime is just make the explosion faster right when our lightning would hit the ground. So here in our retime node, let's also set the input frame range to be from 1 to $fend, so to the end of the timeline. And let's maybe just set the timeline altogether to a value of 200 frames. So we really don't need it to less to 240 frames. So let's preview our points with this retime node. So if I were to increase the speed value, we can see that we are getting this weird displacement of the points happening, which is obviously not what we want, and this is because by default the point ID attribute is using ID, and we just have to get rid of this just so it uses the ptnum, so the number of the points and not their IDs. And now it should work properly, so I could increase the value here. So let's start here with a value of 1, and let's see at what frame our points start to move. So somewhere around frame 21. Okay, and from here I will hold down Alt and left click the speed value, and I will move forward 1 frame with my arrow key, and maybe I will set the speed now to 2.2, and so now it goes twice as fast, and we will slow this down back to 1, maybe over a period of, let's say, maybe at around frame 65. Let's set this back to 1. Okay, and let's see how this will look. So let's maybe preview the points and get a feel of how our speed will be like. Okay, so it starts really fast and then they kind of slow down, or rather go back to their normal speed after a while. So this will just help create more of an impact right where our lightning hits. So this is not at all something that's physically accurate, so this wouldn't ever happen in reality. This is more of a stylistic choice. I really want to accentuate this part where the lightning hits right in the beginning of our explosion, so this will give the whole effect a lot more power to it. And let's go to our merge node and preview the result with the geometry as well. So let's create a flipbook. Okay, so we can see now that this has a lot more impact to it now because of this retiming trick that we did.